What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. This is video number 2 of 4 in the Champs series. I'm recording this on Friday. It's going to probably come out on Saturday or Sunday. And I want to talk, this is a pretty interesting matchup. Again, we're going to go in order of seeding here. So we did FaZe in Miami in the last video. We do Toronto and Thieves, a fun matchup. I would have expected Thieves to maybe be a little bit higher in seeding coming in this one. But unfortunately, with their sort of up and down performance throughout the year and their ability to have no ice, and we'll talk about it through this video, they end up with a 7 seed and get a tough draw against Toronto Ultra, who I think are one of the top 4 favorites to go ahead and make it to the finals. So we're going to start with Toronto. Talk a little bit about their performance, who I think is, what their strengths have been, their weaknesses, who might win awards on their squad, blah, 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 blah. And then we'll talk about their ability to win this series, and then we'll do the same thing for Thieves. So let's dive in. All right, so it's been a interesting year for Toronto Ultra. They obviously made a big roster change coming into the season, dropping Hixie and picking up Envoy, and it immediately kind of paid dividends. They actually weren't that great in 2023 portion of this season, including that really devastating loss online where Envoy had the worst series of all time. But after that series, they played really, really good for a while. Off the back, I think being the best Skid Row team in the game, and a nice finals win, a clean finals win against FaZe, put them top. But immediately they kind of swung the other way. They didn't really adjust well to the new maps being added to the pool throughout sort of Major 2, the Major 3 cycle, in particular to Major 2. Yeah, they had a nice win against Vegas, who had a pretty good split, but they lost to Toronto and then got 3-0'd by New York out of the tournament in top 4, not even getting a chance to really defend their title at Boston, which is a pretty disappointing split for them. Now, the Major 3 Toronto event, in which they were kind of the home team, they unfortunately ended up losing to Optic pretty badly in grand finals of the event. They were playing much better online going into that event, and they had a really nice win coming from winners bracket, beating FaZe in the game 5 round 11. But they absolutely played terrible in that winners finals, and unfortunately, in 2 of the last 3 finals they played, which is Major 3 and Champs last year, they got goose egged in both of those finals. So as much as we talk about with FaZe, their inability to close out with finals, kind of a similar problem with Toronto right now with everybody else but Scrap really not being able to execute on the weekend. Now let's talk about Major 4, because they were great online and they had a very surprise loss to LAG, who beat them on 2 of their best maps. Toronto then made a pretty solid run through the losers bracket, where they end up getting 3-0 stomped on Sunday morning by New York Subliners. Stop me if you've heard this story again from previous events. And once again, this is another event where Toronto is not able to make it to winners or losers finals. It ends up being the 4th best team in the split, when I think that is not really reflective of the squad. And I think really sort of the key thing to talk about, and sort of the factor whether or not Toronto's going to win this event or not, is someone other than Scrap play good at LAN, because you see here that throughout the season, look, they have been very solid at hardpoint, but you see that when we get to Control, they've had some poor performances on LAN, especially from Jamie and Kleenex in total online. In Search and Destroy, Envoy's had kind of an up and down struggle, but you see the rest of them have been fairly solid in the game mode. And then Hardpoint close to a 1, but you see, kind of what Scrap's been getting you. But when you factor it all in online, factor it all in, you see that the numbers are not as good as, say, Optic Texas, New York at times. Now, obviously, I scroll up and I show you FaZe's numbers. So really the key is for Toronto. We know Scrap's having a great season, going to probably be an MVP candidate, going to probably win a couple of Breaking Point awards, going to be an all-star. The rest of the team, not so much at times this year. As good as I think Toby has been, Jamie this last couple of splits, Envoy's kind of really struggled at times this year. They sometimes disappear on the weekend. I think that's a big problem for the squad, which sucks because they're actually a pretty good team. As far as the top 4 teams, I think they're probably the 2nd best team by metrics here. You see probably the best hardpoint team in the game. I mean, we scroll down and take a look at the hardpoint map pool, and it's great. The only map that they're a little iffy on is Vista, kind of 500, and they've been kind of 500 in the last 10 hardpoint maps. Their 6-star is pretty good. Their Rio's pretty solid. Their Karachi's been excellent all year. They have a very good hardpoint map pool aside from Vista, which is fine and should be good enough for them to get through most of the tournament. I think their control, not to skip S&E, we'll get to in a second, I think their control has actually been pretty good the last 2 splits or so. You see that they've won 8 of their last 10 controls, beating FaZe, beating well, that one was with the that one was a bit of an interesting high-rise win, but they beat Optic on Control, and Optic are a pretty good high-rise team. You see their only 2 losses. Interesting enough, we're actually at Major 4 against Seattle and against New York, but overall they've been pretty good at the game mode. Invasion Control is still a little iffy and they've been kind of auto vetoing it. We see their high rise in Karachi has been pretty good. By the way, on the auto veto front, we'll get to that in a second, but their veto situation going in this event might be a little bit interesting. Now, the S&D is a little bit interesting because on the sum total of it, you look at these search stats and they are actually pretty good. But then you dive in and there's some parts of their search game that I'm a little like concerned about that might get exposed if they don't work on things. First off, they are not one of the best first blood teams in the game. They're pretty good at converting first bloods once they get them, but they're not aggressive enough or good enough to win those opening duels. You would think Toby would be up there, only winning 47%, a little bit lower than you probably want. But again, if you're kind of able to claw back those rounds, 3v4, kind of, win a lot of the rounds you shouldn't, and you at least convert your first bloods, well, like you have a chance in the maps. But if they play a team that's hot and getting a lot of first bloods, he might struggle then to win those rounds 3v4. An interesting stat, again, when you dive in, this team is actually not that good on the defensive side of things. And you can remove high rise because they're probably not going to play it. But even on the other maps, they are good at getting first bloods on defense, either top or average. But you see that conversion is very, very, very poor. Only 74.7% in total, which is actually dead last in the league. And you see on most maps, it's actually pretty low. Now you see they are very solid at retaking on most of these maps. So I think it just comes down to, them just trying to avoid getting blooded. And even when they actually do get first blood on defense, they tend to sometimes throw those rounds. So a little bit concerned about the stats considering the caliber of search play you get out of New York and FaZe. I'm a little worried about them in this game mode, but I will say that on LAN, they have been pretty good at it compared to online, and they have been pretty good on it in game 5. So this is really a key game mode for Toronto as far as the things they want to do. Now, I will say this for Toronto right now, they have some real hard stuck auto vetoes, in particular high rise S&D and real hard points. So I'm very curious coming into this event with those two maps. Have they put in enough work that they're confident to play those maps? I'm gonna be honest, my expectation is maybe a real hard point might see its way in, but the way that they play search, I just don't see high rise S&D being part of the calculus. And I think they'll be fine playing any of the other maps in the pool, but one to watch with them because unlike FaZe, I think the vetoes and in particular the auto vetoes are a little bit tougher for Toronto because they've got some hard stuck ones. They don't got one, they got two, and you could argue they might actually have three right now because they don't really like playing innovation control at the moment. And by the way, they didn't like playing high rise control for most of the year either. But all of that aside, I expect Toronto's strong respawn gameplay and pretty solid search gameplay to get them through the series. And they're going to play a Thieves team that has a hard time closing maps, not as consistent in the hard point and control, but game 5 could be an opportunity for Thieves because I think they're a very good search team. So for Toronto's win the respawns, and you probably take this 3-0, 3-1. Just don't let Thieves extend this series because as you get to game 5, they have a chance. And in particular, I expect Toronto to probably be one of the teams we expect on grand finals on Sunday. But if this team struggles, if it's another event where Scraps the only one really shooting back, not getting great impact from inside, Envoy's not playing super consistent, and Toby's kind of playing kind of B minus, I think Toronto could get fourth again, and I'm very curious to see what they would do with their team after a disappointing champs performance. All right, enough Toronto Ultra. Let's talk about LA Thieves, who have, well, they've had a bit of an adventure to get here to champs. Big changes for Thieves after the whole team blew up after last season with Sam Octane retiring. They start off the year with Afro, Cammy, Ghosty, and Joe Deceives. And Major 1 was not a great cycle for them. They were pretty meh online, and they got smoked first series at Major 1. Bada bing, bada boom out of the tournament on Friday. They then make a pretty decent amount of roster changes. They bench Joe Deceives. They go ahead and bench and actually release Cammy. And they bring in Nasty over from who was playing good in EU Challengers, and Kremp over playing from FC Black. And they were pretty solid online, although a lot of series were going to game 5. But they get double rounded and go out of the tournament on Friday at Major 2. And at that point, they were in kind of a really tough spot because the remaining schedule, Major 3 and Major 4, really hard. They need to find a way to do better on land to qualify in. So they end up dropping Marcus, aka Afro, who's playing good in S&D, but not so much at the other game modes. And they end up picking Joe back up. And that's the roster they've been running through most of the season. And online, even though some of the schedules have been really tough, especially Major 4 cycle, They were able to qualify for winners bracket in both splits. They get a nice top 8 at Major 3, an improvement from getting dead last. And they were able to get top 6 at Major 4. As you can see, they beat Miami, lost to LAG 3-0. I don't know what is it with that LAG Thieves matchup, but can't beat them. And then they got a close loss to New York in a game 4. And I think top 6 is kind of where I'd put Thieves' ceiling right now, because they're kind of an interesting squad. I'm going to scroll up here real quick so you can kind of see the Hardpoint S&D control record. They're not the best respawn team in the world, and part of that is because they just don't make consistent decisions. They blow a lot of advantages, and they're just in general not that disciplined at times in the game modes. They've lost a lot of close ones, but their S&D is very good, and that's why they've been able to win a lot of game 5s this year. You see 9-3 in game 5, 75 win percentage, and 12 is actually like really, really good. But you see again this like crazy split, right? Like they do a pretty good job of winning and going up 1-1, but you see here like they're not the best team in control. Recently have been very kind of iffy at the game mode. They've been very poor at game 4s, especially on maps they didn't pick. But they are able to ice up game 5. Like you see the control split here. Like they've actually gotten they've been kind of up and down in hardpoint. But you see 3 and 7 during stage 3. That's why they went to so many game 5s. And 4-6 in stage 4. They just can't figure out like a high rise. They fix one map, then the other map gets really poor, and no one really wants to play them on Karachi. So it's high rise invasion, and yeah, it's not been the best of times. There's nothing like crazy I think that stands out too much in their stats in say hardpoint. They're just a sort of bang on average team. They do have times where they do get blown out on some maps. That's why the differentials not particularly good at times, and Subbase in particular has not been very kind to them this year, pretty much the whole season. And Vista is a map they haven't quite adjusted to yet, but they've been decent 6-star. They've been okay at Rio, so like that's going to be sort of their bread and butters. But the other maps, they're just not a fantastic hardpoint team on paper, and they kind of rely a lot on that game 2 to really stay in series. But if they do win that game 1, they can be dangerous because they are a good S&D squad. Like if we scroll down here, like S&D stats the whole season are like really good. I mean, really pick your stat on this one. Like they get a lot of first bloods, they convert them. Their defensive stats are pretty solid. They do sometimes troll some rounds, but you see that they are really good at getting pressure, getting bloods, and then closing out. And they're a real nuisance on most of these maps. Although 6-star has been kind to them and kind of is an auto veto right now, so we'll see if they improve on that. But they've been really good at real search and really good at invasion, really good at high rise S&D as well. And as you can see with the control, yeah, no, it's ugly. Especially really enough, they're actually like not a bad defensive team, although again playing a lot of invasion and high rise at our defensive side of maps. You see the offenses, oof, it's ugly. It's tough with these because I think like we can see her talk a lot of stats, but it's one of those things where it's not really a stats based thing. This team has a hard time closing out situations, and I worry that as talented as some of the players are on this team, like they just don't have that dog in them, and that's why like this team's been outside of Dan, they've been eh. And I kind of expect them in order to really kind of beat Toronto. First off, they're gonna have to find a respawn somewhere in this pool, and you look at kind of the overlapping map pools, and it's not really that great for Thieves here. Like what? Like a Rio's not going to end up in this series, so like are you going to beat Toronto on a Karachi? No, you probably veto that. So you got to hope that Subbase, Vista, or 6-star, you win at least one of those. I think S&D, again, like we talked about with Miami and FaZe, like I think I can count on Thieves to win 1 search against Toronto. Can they win 2 in a game 5? It's possible. But control, I mean, this is really the bread and butter here, man. I have a good feeling to be 1-1 going to the 3rd map. But do I expect Thieves to beat Toronto control? I don't. If they can though, they're not going to win map 4, but they're probably going to potentially have a good chance to win map 5 against Toronto and maybe ice up a game 5 against them. But I think realistically, look, if you think about Thieves' chance in losers bracket where they're probably going to end up, they're going to have to beat LAG, which I don't know. And then from there, trying to get to top 4, I think even more so than Miami, I really think that Thieves are probably going to be a top 8 candidate here. I think top 6 is going to be real tough for them. And I just don't see top 4 based on the way they play. And I think there's some good things to take away from the season if you're the Thieves staff. Then this, we'll probably talk about it more like in a post-season video, off-season video, in between champs and EWC. But I think realistically, Dan Ghosty is a keeper and potentially like a fringe all-star awards candidate this year. But everybody else has kind of made not a great argument to keep their roster spot next year. So we'll see what Thieves kind of do considering the situation. Can Dan carry them to top 6, top 4? Probably not. I think they're probably crashing out top 8. And to be honest, I don't really see the upside against them against Toronto. But if you are a betting man, map to spreads or map to win for Thieves could be a really good bet if you want to place one on this matchup. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like if you enjoy it. We got obviously Optic Texas matchup coming up next. We got the New York matchup coming up next. So make sure you stay tuned for that. As always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.